Hello, and welcome to British Literature, the Middle Ages. The text used for this course is the Norton Anthology of English Literature, 8th edition. You will need either the larger, blue, all-in-one volume with the Queen Elizabeth cover, or the smaller volume with the medieval painting on the cover. This smaller volume, Volume A, is part of a 3-volume set. The study of British literature starts with the Roman invasion and occupation. Various changes were going on in England, or Britannia as it was known under Roman Catholic rule. Anglo-Saxons invaded around 450 BCE, bringing with them the mostly Germanic Old English. This was followed by the infamous Battle of Hastings in 1066, in which William of Normandy became William the Conqueror and added French to the evolving lexicon. Not surprisingly, the French stories of the legendary King Arthur gained in popularity during this time period. Shortly thereafter, English as a standalone language began to come into its own. Writers such as Geoffrey Chaucer and John Gower used French, Latin, and Italian works as inspirations, but wrote their works in English. Parliament began to conduct business in English, and books, although expensive to produce, began to be published in English. But, as with any new language being formed from other languages, there were many dialects. Old English, Early Middle English, and Middle English existed almost concurrently, thus presenting a problem for literacy. The problem began to dissolve when publisher William Caxton introduced the printing press to England, bringing cheaper books published with standard type. This time period is subjectively ended in 1485, when Henry VII, the first Tudor king and father of the infamous Henry VIII, ascended the throne, ending the War of the Roses. Any study of the Middle Ages in Britain must include the oldest long poem written in the English language. That story is Beowulf, a tale of unparalleled heroism in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Although the author is unknown, most critics, historians, and academics believe it to be the work of one person. It is not only a testament to the craftsmanship required by bards, who undoubtedly had to recite the poem from memory, but to the intellect of artisans in a time often referred to pejoratively as medieval. What does not go unnoticed in the story is its allegorical nature. It is easy to see Beowulf as a retelling of the story of Christ, based on his ability to command the love and respect of his people, his willingness to die for them, and the ability to overcome the 3 challenges set before him. Although the title includes the word history, the legendary histories of Britain, set down during the Middle Ages, were more legend than fact. One author, Geoffrey of Monmouth, was a clergyman who wrote Le Roman de Brut, a story that linked the founding of Britain to Homer's epic The Iliad through Brutus, the great-grandson of a survivor of Troy. Another author, Wace, was also part of the clergy. The part of his legend that we will be studying begins generations after Brutus's founding of Britain, with the Roman emperor's challenge of Arthur's right to rule Britain as a sovereign nation. Third, we will be reviewing a version of events set down by Layamon. Layamon, yet another member of the church, builds on and adapts Wace's vision, creating a more romantic Arthurian tale. Our study of Layamon begins shortly after Arthur has defended his throne against Rome, only to have to contend with problems back home. Finally, we will be looking at the myth of Arthur's return. Like the return of Christ, many Britons believed that their one true king, who had brought peace and prosperity, would one day return to rule again. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is one of the most enduring and best written Arthurian tales. Written sometime between 1375 and 1400 by an unknown author, it is representative of both a provincial and sophisticated worldview. This story, composed in alliterative verse, recounts an event from early in King Arthur's reign, when a mysterious and magical knight, clad in head-to-toe green armor, challenges anyone to behead him as long as the challenger allows the Green Knight to do the same, 1 year and 1 day in the future. Sir Gawain, being Arthur's most courteous and virtuous knight, accepts the challenge. Geoffrey Chaucer was the son of a wine merchant who worked as a page in the household of royalty. Working around the aristocracy, Chaucer had time to cultivate a love for writing that undoubtedly led to the Canterbury Tales. Multiple stories about a group of strangers on a pilgrimage to visit the shrine of Thomas à Becket, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury. They each agreed to partake in an innocent storytelling contest with a small prize awarded to the winner. Of the many tales created by Chaucer, we will be looking at 3. First, there is the Miller's Tale. The miller, insisting he go after the knight, tells a raunchy story about foolishness, lust, and adultery, meant to quiet or oppose the honorable tale previously told by the knight. Next, we have the Wife of Bath's prologue, in which she claims to be an expert on marriage since she has been married 5 times, thrice to rich old adoring husbands who died and left her everything, once to a man barely worth mentioning, and once to a man 20 years her junior who treated her as badly as she treated her first 3 husbands. Finally, we have the Pardoner's prologue, tale, and epilogue. The Pardoner delights the travelers with a story of 3 men who seek to kill death as retribution for the death of a friend. These men, whose greed and trickery lead them from their intended path, find death where they least expect it. Although not as common or as recorded, there were women who took their faith as seriously as men of the cloth. Without the benefit of church protection, we will be discussing 2 such women. At the age of 30, Julian of Norwich, a single, childless anchoress who devoted her life to total religious study, began having visions. These visions, dealing mostly with the Passion of the Christ, became the source of her meditation and reflection for the rest of her life. As the meanings of these visions became clear, Julian wrote down her impressions. Often these impressions, such as Jesus as a mother figure, were controversial. Margery Kempe, on the other hand, was a married woman with 14 children. Her visions began after the birth of her first child and persisted for the rest of her life. Uncommon for a married woman during this time, Margery negotiated a celibacy contract with her husband and began a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Although she could not read or write, Margery Kempe was an intelligent woman who found the right people to transcribe her story. While there were others who wrote about Arthur's reign, it wasn't until Sir Thomas Malory, a thief, hooligan, and convict, set pen to paper that the story took on its most popular form. In his work, La Muerte de Arthur, or The Death of Arthur, Malory recounts not only the rise and fall of Arthur, but of his knights and their adventures. Chief among the